So Anel, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk in,
thank you, and thanks for inviting me to be part of such a special group of people.
You're most welcome, and it's great to have you on the show. Now, Anel, before we walk into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in an East Rand town, Afrikaans family of 4, with my father an engineer and my mother a school teacher. So the one really instilling a curiosity about life, and the other one extreme discipline for getting the job done and working very hard. But that was also a fantastic background to shape a child, and it was a very loving and nurturing environment. I always loved to do things differently, and I got the support to be able to do that. I ran various little businesses while I was at school. I actually ended up selling cosmetics. I made beads. I sold beads when there was a craze for beads. So there was that entrepreneurial, dare to be different streak actually from childhood.
And can you tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Sure. I knew what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Which is much easier if you're in that environment because you're not exposed to so many things over time. So it's easy to know what you don't want to be. But then what you want to be is much harder. And that I actually decided I want to go into business. I've mentioned the entrepreneurial side a little bit earlier. I knew that I loved mathematics and data and statistics. And at the end, actually, my career chose me because I paged through the UJ scholarship booklet. I saw that there were incredible scholarships for mathematics and statistics. I actually applied for one and thought that that would be a nice mix between creativeness, building models, but also doing the math side that I really, really enjoyed.
And can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
I think it is a mixture of people. And if you talk about inspiration, I think what is very important is, what do you aspire to? And that's the most important thing, because you can only be happy and have a fulfilled life if you have fulfilled your own aspirations. And that looks very different from person to person. So I've always chosen to have role models across different aspects of life. Maybe somebody inspires you with regards to academics, another with regards to leadership. So it's like a mixture of people that you call on to be your inspiration.
Right. Now, Anel, today you're one of the leading women in banking in South Africa. And I believe you've been in leadership roles, especially at Nedbank, over the last 22 years. So looking back over your leadership journey, would you say there was a turning point?
I think there has been 2 leadership turning points in my life. The one was I won a scholarship to go to Cambridge while I was at university. And that was an incredible learning opportunity. But apart from learning and the academics thereof and the education, there was the exposure to the world at the time where South Africa was rather insulated, to the perspective of many other fellow students. And it really opened my eyes to a much larger world than what I had experienced growing up in the East Rand. And that to me was a turning point in terms of thinking, approach, how you look at problems, and actually how you solve them. And I think another turning point for me was I stepped into this role on the 1st of March 2020, which is also the date of lockdown.
Right.
So I started this role in lockdown and had to lead a big business from here for the first time. And that was an incredibly hard experience, very fulfilling at the end, but very different to what I was used to, walking the dealing floor with my colleagues always around me.
So Anel, what would you say is driving you today?
I think it is purpose that drives us. Purpose gives us energy, the drive to do our best. But the goal of purpose has many, many different layers. and it is adaptive, but it's also about connections. And that is what purpose is around. For me, it is firstly the connection with myself, the conscious effort to be grounded and resourced and through self-care, the relationship with those directly around you, family, kids, the role I can play in their lives, making a difference, the gentle nudge, the conversations, and watching your kids actually growing into adults. That connection with women, your circles around you, that is actually at a personal level what gives you purpose. But at a career level, it is also about being proud of what you do, celebrating your successes while learning from your mistakes. And actually, given the role of an investment bank and where we find ourselves, we are in such a good position to be able to help some of the problems of society and make sure that it is a more meaningful, equitable society that we find ourselves in. But at the core of purpose is actually gratitude. Gratitude for who you are, where you are, and the role that you can play, the privilege and the gratitude for the role that you can play. And that is, how do I use my skills where I am positioned to contribute to building a better society for everybody. And I think what actually happens is that you are drawn to questions that you haven't asked before, and how you then as a leader can improve by listening, because what we surround ourselves with is such a diverse group of people. And that's actually what, for me, is what purpose is and how that leads to drive.
Thank you. Now, Anel, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Sure. I think the one thing is agility and the ability to adopt, because we find ourselves in a world that is increasingly complex and it is uncertain. And there's not one leadership style that is actually applicable in all situations. So one needs to be able to learn to listen, learn which questions to ask. Don't be overwhelmed by the complexity. Test your outcomes and be willing to adjust very, very quickly if you realize that you're wrong. And actually, it is only by focusing on your purpose with this ability to adapt that one can make sense of this extremely complex environment that we actually find ourselves in.
Now, Anel, what have you learned from your own leadership journey that you consider most important for building future leaders, empowering future leaders?
Yeah, I think there's a realization. Leaders are seen as merchants of certainty, but all we can be are brokers of hope, because nobody has all the answers. And one should never assume that you can have all the answers. As a matter of fact, we don't even know all the questions that we have to ask. But we need to approach every problem from all angles. Think how we need to do it. Surround yourself with a diverse group of people, because it's only through that that you can actually bring all those perspectives to solve a problem. And underlying to that is inclusivity.
Now, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
The fact that you're not going to know the answer. To me, that is the biggest challenge that you do have, because people look at you and wonder what the answer is. And in the meantime, you are also wondering what the right approach is. And I suppose in those challenges that you encounter, you need to learn to be bold. And I always say the words that I would like things to remember by is to be unshakably bold, meaning that you have to stare down the gritty truths of where we find ourselves, both globally and locally, but simultaneously lean into the pragmatic approach that these are our problems to solve and that we will persevere. And that is actually also where the opportunity lies.
Thank you. Now, Anel, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
I have mentioned the words unshakably bold, and in there is also courage.
Yeah.
And it is what is required to remain true to yourself and your purpose, despite the uncertain environment that we find ourselves. And I link these two words, bold and courageous, because when you think about those, you think about jumping from a bridge, or you think about outward events, decisiveness, focusedness, bravery in the face of tough times. However, unshakably bold doesn't stop just there. And it is actually much more profound for me, because courage links to an old Norman French word meaning heart or heartfulness. And to me, unshakably bold is heartful courage to do the right thing in the right way in a human form. And that combines action with heart. And sometimes courage is not necessarily about doing anything. It's about being a sensitive listener and open to our own and others' vulnerabilities in the face of all of this uncertainty. Open to not knowing, open to stepping out of our comfort zones, working in new ways, slowing down to go fast, and actually just the courage to put yourself in the shoes of another person. Ask for help. And I suppose that those words, unshakably bold with courage, to me is what is so key in being a leader. It doesn't matter where you find yourself in nowadays.
Now, Anel, as a mentor to so many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yes, I think mentoring is about growing confidence. Confidence by believing in oneself, creating an absolute awareness of the possible, and then give the support when stepping out of the comfort zone. And because I've had a long career, there are many mentors that and mentees that I've had. And I use those two words interchangeably, because as much as I'm mentoring, I am also being mentored by different perspectives, by different views. And actually, I call it these reverse mentoring. But when you talk about success, for me, it is identifying somebody with a lot of potential, who needs a nudge, who needs some skills, and actually equipping them. And in our business today, there are many grads and young people that came in, showed lots of potential, and today they are actually leading big businesses in our environment. And it's also not only about leading big businesses, it's also very much about being a complete person.
Now, looking back over your own leadership journey, Anel, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered and maybe worked with that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
Yeah, so I think it is the leaders without the titles that we learn most of. The faceless men and women who hold homes and work and children, care for everyday lives, the community leaders, that group of people that carry society with power and with love. And it's those unsung heroes that are the leaders in our world. But the role models I follow with the most interest are those that are not leading for power or status, but are fulfilling those roles in NGOs and other environments, leading for the whole, making the world a better place, looking at community, but executing in a relentless and selfless way. And that, to me, is the leaders that I look up to.
Now, Anel, where can our listeners follow you, and how can they connect with you?
Connect is actually very easy. It's as simple as a WhatsApp or an email. My email address is known on the site. And I love that, learning from people from different environments. And I try, whenever there's time, I always answer, but also to have a more meaningful relationship. Now, being part of that, your thought leadership is placed on LinkedIn and in articles, and I participate in many talks and shows. So there's a lot on the internet. I sometimes wonder how much it is, and is it not too much? But I think it is a privilege to know that some of the thinking somewhere will spark something interesting, and it can lead to great things.
Now, last but not least, Anel, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are looking to finish school, enter the world of work, start a career? What are maybe 1 or 2 success factors they should keep in mind?
This is a bit contrary to the normal, because my success factor and my motto in life is, don't take yourself or life too seriously. Have fun. Live each moment. Time is our most valuable asset.
Well, Anel, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and for reminding us that we all need to be courageous and bold